How you doing, fans? Welcome back to another episode of In the Sand podcast. You know me, I'm excited about life, excited to be able to keep doing this, and I'm excited to be able to sit down with another great coach and talk a little bit of sports. Of course, I always like to get out my box a little bit. So if I can get in basketball, football, baseball, volleyball, or tennis, I'm excited about it. This will be my second football coach that I've had on. I had my guy, Coach Kelly. Had him on from Caledonia, and of course, a good friend of mine. So I'm excited to be able to have Coach Williams on. Met Coach Williams a couple of years ago when I was at Pisgah High School. He was at Pelahatchie High School. And one thing that stood out to me about Coach Williams is his professionalism, especially being just a young guy doing it at a high level. Always carried himself well, always had his kids well prepared. And as we do this interview, I'm just excited just to be able just to kind of understand the ins and outs of what makes Coach Williams a great coach. And so, of course, he coaches at Brandon High School. Obviously, we're moving into 7A. And so that carries challenges of itself. So for him to be able to spend a little time with me means a lot to me. So, Coach, I do appreciate that, and definitely welcome to the show.
Yeah, Brandon, appreciate you having me on, and hopefully we can have some good conversation today that maybe somebody can take something from.
Yes, sir, man. Again, it's just good to be able to sit down with good colleagues. Man, we're in the same school district. I'm at Ridgeland now, but again, it's good to be able to just have these conversations, and I love to have these more. I want to have them more often because you never know what you can learn from a person. So, Coach, I'm not going to take too much of your time because everybody's excited. I know when everybody see Coach Williams on my YouTube podcast, they're going to chime in and want to hear what you got to say, man. So, Coach, just talk to us a little bit about your journey. And of course, as we go through, we're going to go back and kind of stop and talk about different positions or different places you've been, but just kind of give us I guess as they say, a bird's eye view into who Coach Williams is.
Yeah, I mean, I think first thing, if you can fast forward to kind of the part that everybody wants to hear, went to Mississippi State, graduated from there, played football for 4 years. And, that was a big part of, who I am and who I became when I was in college. Married my wife, who I dated from senior year on in high school. We've got 3 beautiful kids, 2 little girls and a boy. And they're kind of why I do what I do. Everybody, that's something I talk about a lot is, having a passion and having a reason why you show up every day to work and why you keep going when times get tough. So they're kind of why I do what I do. So that's important to start with. But from a coaching perspective, I joke around. I always had like a coach's mentality, but I kind of got into coaching by accident. I was going to be a PT. I wanted to go to physical therapy school, did my whole, that's what I majored in. I was done my internship, all that. So I was ready to roll. And when I got done playing at state, just kind of still hung around the football program, ended up going and volunteering for Jamie Mitchell at Starkville High School. I was bored. I'm going to be honest with you. My wife was finishing up school and I was bored. So I was like, man, I'm going to go over there and see if they'll let me come hang out for a little bit and work. And I don't know, it was probably about 2 weeks into it. I was already running the speed and agility stations outside, kind of in charge. He kind of handed me the keys, and it didn't take me very long until I walked in the apartment and told my wife, I said, well, I don't think I'm going to PT school anymore. And it was kind of a bewildered look from her. But I think now she realizes that I was just chasing my passion and not trying to, force a career on myself. But,
yeah,
went from Starkville High School, had some opportunities to do some different things. I went back home to Northwest Rankin. It was something I was passionate about, was going back home. Program was a little down at that point in time. Actually coached football, soccer, and track there. So I was a year-round coach for 4 years. Kind of progressed through the football program as far as my responsibilities and duties, as well as track and soccer. Finished off. Last thing I did there was awesome. Was won a state championship. I won one as a player, as a junior there as soccer, and then the last thing I did at Northwest Rankin High School was coaching under Chris Gardner as we won a state championship there at the end, and I guess I was 17. Then that's where I went to Pelahatchie, where you and I, met each other. I was there for 3 great years, a great place. Me and my family, we lived out there, moved out there. I got immersed in the community. And the toughest thing about that, man, kind of not going through year by year, but the toughest thing about that was ending it on COVID. COVID hit. And that was when I left and took the head coaching job at Ridgeland, an athletic director job at Ridgeland. And the hardest part was not getting to see those kids face to face and, tell them like a man, that I was going to do something different for my family. But that Ridgeland move, turned out to be kind of an awesome thing. There's a long backstory on all that too. But went there for during COVID. Had no clue that it was going to be such a short lived deal. But a job like Brandon comes open with a lot of people that I was familiar with. A guy that was my former boss that gave me my first head coach and an athletic director's job. I just knew I had to do it. So after a year, I moved over to Brandon. I've been here almost 3 years now. So going into my third football season here, 11th year overall, 7th as an AD and football coach. So been a fun journey, man. There's a lot of highs, a lot of lows, and we'll hit on some of those today, as we go through the podcast. But it hadn't always been sunshines and rainbows for me, man. There's been some low moments, and but I think that's the moments where you grow the strongest, and that's the moments where you come back and you find a way to do things a little better.
Coach, that's an amazing story, man. And I want, Coach, if I don't get too personal with it, Coach, tell people how old are. What's your age, Coach?
I'm 32 right now. I just turned 32.
32.
A month and a half ago.
So 32. So when I hear that, Coach, and you're 11 years in a game, and I look at that, Coach, it's something. God has given you something special with that, to be able to be in the position that you are, to be able to have that kind of weight on your shoulders, and to be able to do it at such a young age, man. That's amazing. And I kind of reflect back to when I first started coaching. I started coaching roughly around 22, 23 years of age. And the opportunity for me to become a head coach at a young age really kind of took me by storm. 24 years old, I was able to be the interim at Murrah High School. Got the job right when district starts. It's a lot of pressure on you. And to be honest, I was just so excited just to be able to say I was the head coach at a major school, and even my own high school. And I never really sat down and reflected about like what I was doing at that time was a remarkable feat, because when you are young, and 24 years old is not roughly young, but when you first start coaching and you haven't been doing it, that is a pretty young age to do it. So I know this question will come on a little bit later, Coach, but what did you lean on, or what gave you the inspiration daily, or how did you make it through those challenging times being a young coach early in your career, and maybe even now, because again, Coach, you're still pretty roughly young, and you're doing it at a high level at a major program, Coach, and I want to be able to let people know the secret to be able to do that, because there's some seasoned coaches who have those same pressure that may not be handling it as well, or use some of the things that happen in your life that make you kind of great so far. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of success is relative. I mean, I've been blessed to have really good coaches around me. Had really good players that I've gotten to coach, and I mean, but we all know, and I mean, everybody kind of jokes about it, but it's serious. I mean, if you don't have players, you're not going to win.
Yeah.
And winning is a lot of what people, when they look at me like, well, you've won everywhere you've been. Well, I mean, I really have. I've been blessed and fortunate to have really good kids that have bought into what we did and what we asked them to do. And I know we'll get into that a little bit later. But, as far as the pressures of being a head coach, being an athletic director, being at big programs, it goes back to the first thing I talked about in the podcast. You just got to have somebody to lean on. You got to lean on your faith a lot. You got to lean on your family a lot. And one thing I do, and guys that know me really well, people know me, I just don't take myself too seriously, man. I mean, man, this is a fun career. It's a rewarding career. And, I got in this to change kids' lives. I didn't get in this to change my life financially or anything. I mean, I got in to change kids' lives, and that's what I try to make sure every day I keep in perspective, no matter what's going on the field, as far as wins and losses, performances. I try to make sure that I'm always pouring into them, trying to grow them into great young leaders and trying to change the world, one child at a time. But, we fall short, man. And that's where, the pressure, it doesn't come in times of success a lot of times, right? I mean, there's attacks that come then too, but the pressures come a lot of times when things aren't going good. And I think as long as you kind of take a humble approach to life and a humble approach to coaching and just understand it's not about you, I think that those times are a little easier to get through. And I think that your kids look to you a little more in times of humility than times of pride, if that makes sense.
That's true. I think that makes a whole lot of sense. And I think a lot of coaches can agree that time really is the essence of success. And that's kind of the reason of the podcast as well, because a lot of times, and I say it, but I'm trying to drive home a point, that individuals just see us for the particular time that they see us on the field or on the tennis court or at the pool when we're coaching our teams, but they don't really understand all that goes on before you even get to that point. And a lot of times, and I know you may be able to test this as well, sometimes coaching the game is the most easiest part because there's so many other things going on, from maybe dealing with pep rallies, fundraisers, booster club, organization of people, managing adults, which is sometimes hard. So a lot of times the game really is a place where you really find your peace. And as soon as that horn goes off, as soon as that whistle ends the game, it picks right back up again. So I think I'm glad you said that, and I think that it helps somebody out a lot. Coach, I want to talk a little bit about your Mississippi State days. We're going to come right back into coaching. Coach, just talk to us a little bit. You can give us pretty much a summary of your 4 years, but you were at Mississippi State during a very particular time, which was an amazing, I would say probably be amazing to be a part of. So, Coach, just talk to us a little bit about your position. Talk to us a little bit about maybe some ups and downs, life lessons, the coaching staff, and just the biggest thing that you take from Mississippi State, because everybody know outside of that Brandon Bulldog, then Mississippi State Bulldog means a lot to you as well.
Yeah. And I think one thing that I always have been able to look back on is, I have gone to a number of different programs and been able to build them back from where they were. And I think a lot of that was going back to, like I said, I became a lot of who I am today was because of my time at Mississippi State. And we came in, I got there in a time where coming off of a low patch in football, Dan Mullen gets the job. Matt Bayless, who was our strength coach there, who just about any football guy who was there at that point in time will, speak really highly of him. And he was a guy that changed my thinking on a lot of things, changed my philosophy on a lot of leadership things. But, I was fortunate got there as a walk-on. Something I wanted to do, had some options to go play at some lower level programs coming out of high school, but just didn't get that offer that I really felt like I wanted. And I grew up a Mississippi State fan, and I told my parents, I was like, whatever it takes, I'm just going to go find a way. I was like, I'll just go and I'll earn my spot. And got there early. You kind of think about it. It's kind of a humbling experience as a walk-on. People who have ever been one is like, you've been even walk-ons. People don't realize this. They've been really good high school football players a lot of times. So you get there and you get your 117 number. You're just trying to make do. All the scholarship guys are going to get their lunch, and you're having to go find out what you need to do. So it's a humbling experience early on, but I'm telling you, it really does make you appreciate when you get to that scholarship level after you've earned your way. But there's a couple of things that I always go back to and I hang my hat on. I use with my kids. One particular thing that happened when I was there was when I first got there and nobody even knew who I was. Relative, you understand what I mean by that.
Yes.
The coach did, but most of the guys in the room, and we were in fall camp. It's 100 degrees out there, and we're doing scout kickoff, and Coach Mullen got irritated that day, and we did scout kickoff for quite a while. It's probably 25, 30 minutes, and it's just wave after wave after wave. Well, every time I would run down, I'd be 10, 15 yards out in front of everybody, tag off, whatever, and I'd jog back. Some guys are sitting on the sideline trying to get out of the next rep, and I'd just be right back in there every other rep. So we come into a team meeting the next day, and he's got kickoff up there, scout kickoff and kickoff return, and so he's pointing a laser at me as a rundown, He's, this is rep 12, this is rep 13, it's rep 14. And every time it was just completely consistent. And he was like, who is that? And I didn't want to say anything. I was like, that's me. And he said, well, stand up, son. I was like, yes, sir. And so that was the day where I taught myself and I learned, because that day, I'm going to be honest with you, I want to do like everybody else did. I want to go take a knee on the side and go get a water break, right? But I learned that if you really want to earn your stripes, you got to go out there and you got to do it. And I think I got a lot of respect from that day on. I ended up playing in 34 games, nothing spectacular. I was a big special teams guy. Played a little wide out here and there, but, a lot of my job and what translated into off the field stuff and into coaching profession was I mentored the young guys when they come in. They knew that, whether it was weight room, whether it was getting them in the playbook when the coaches couldn't be around them. That was just something I always did. Always wanted to be around football, always wanted to learn football, always wanted to learn about the leadership side of it and the way to get an edge. And that was something that Dan Mullen, for all of his, for all the things that people say about him, man, he's one of those guys that he just knows how to create that mental edge in kids. He knows how to get people to play really hard. And him and Matt Bayless were just kind of the perfect mix there. But fortunate now, man, a lot of those guys, we had such a strong brotherhood. They built a really strong brotherhood. I get to work with 3 of my guys that I played with there at State, which is a really cool deal. So we just kind of get to keep that going and keep rolling. So,
Coach, listening to your story on that, I don't see how you didn't think you was going to be a coach, man, because I'm listening to what you said. You saw an opportunity, didn't have to do it. Walk on, you getting it out the mud, as the kids say, and you're grinding. I mean, you out there on special teams, and everybody know, man, special teams, kickoff, that's a brutal, because it takes a lot of wear and tear on your body, because, again, it's almost a collision at the end. But you do that every single day. And then here's the thing about it I like. You take the opportunity that you was given. You didn't complain about it. It wasn't necessarily the most notable position, but you did it every single day. And then you mentor kids. So, Coach, man, to me, it seems like, man, you've been coaching since you probably before you even realized it. But a lot of times when you reflect back, you see those things. And that's why I like to listen to people's story, because when you hear their story, it gives you inspiration, and you can always pick things from it. So, Coach, I'm glad you shared that. I wanted to touch a little bit about Northwest, but not much, because, again, I know that is the rival. But, again, no, I'm just playing. But the part I do want to hit on is we talk about it a lot, about possibly coaching back at home. And it's always, to me, I feel like it's a thin line in the sand, because there's a lot of great things that go with going back home, and then there's some things that can turn on you real fast, which I will make you kind of maybe think twice about it. With your time at Northwest, talk about what really made that special, and did you have an opportunity to coach at Northwest, or was it that wasn't a possibility at that moment because of other things transpired? Or did you get an offer that had to get you to remove from Northwest? Because I know a lot of times people start off at their high school to be the assistant, and hopefully they one day can turn into being the head coach, but it didn't work out for you like that. So talk us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I don't know if that was ever, like getting into it kind of goes back to, I mean, you got to know me well to know, like, that never really crossed my mind. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't ever really, going into it, I never really thought about that. I was young and just wanted to coach. And like I said, I was doing 3 different sports.
Gotcha.
Knew I wanted to be, football focused down the road, but just kind of took it a step at a time. And, I'm gonna say one thing about coaching back home, and this is kind of how I sum it up to everybody. People that they talk about wanting to get back home, they want to go back and coach. Is it's really good to do that. I loved my time there. I still love Northwest Rankin. It's always going to be a part of me. But the hardest part about it is when you go back as a young kid, whether you're straight out of college and you got a lot of the teachers used to be there. It can be very comfortable to go to work every day.
Yep.
And I don't know that as coaches, you always grow whenever you're comfortable. And that was the word I started using. I didn't get the first head coaching job that I interviewed for. I interviewed for a couple of them after my second year at Northwest Rankin, and after my third year, and ended up in my 4th year getting the job at Pelahatchie. But part of what made me look was, number one, I knew I wanted to lead. I knew I wanted to lead my own program, and that wasn't a slight at anybody else. I just kind of felt like I was ready to do that at a pretty young age because of, kind of some of the things that had gone down at Mississippi State, having a number of different position coaches, kind of getting to see how that works, having to reset, having to restart. And that happened early on in my career at Northwest Rankin. We had 3 head coaches in 4 years. So I got to the point where I felt like I had learned a lot from a number of guys. I felt like I was ready to do that. And I felt like I was getting a little comfortable going to work every day. And anybody who is listening and understands what I mean, sometimes when you show up and you think your days are really good and you're still trying to elevate and you're still trying to make yourself better, you can fall into that lull of showing up and taking your foot off the gas a little bit, and that's not who I am. That's not who I ever wanted to be. That's not, and I'll be honest with you, I'll stop doing what I do now if I ever don't have that fire lit. You know what I mean? I'm just a guy that wakes up every morning, ripping and running and ready to roll. And that was part of what drew me away from Northwest Rankin, is just another challenge, something I'd never done. I had never been to a small school. Couldn't have, I mean, there was a point in time where if you would have asked me where Pelahatchie is, I'd have known where it was, but I wouldn't have been able to tell you how to get there. So it was just awesome to go do that, do something completely different, get outside of my comfort zone. But my time in Northwest Rankin was awesome, man. There's still so many people there that I love and I respect, and that are, played a big role in my life, and in the success I've had to this point. So it's a special place, and always will be to me.
Yeah, Coach, I agree to that. I think you can get comfortable, and to be honest, mine was a little different. I didn't choose to leave, but I believe if I would have got the head coach, I believe I probably would still be at Murrah High School to this
Yeah,
day, because again, that's where I really thought that I probably wanted to start and end it. But I'm glad that the Lord moved me in a different direction, because there's so many other opportunities that open up for me, that I'm so appreciative of, and so I'm appreciative of my time there. But unlike you, I wanted to. I'm glad you learned. You saw that earlier before I saw it. But it is good to kind of branch out sometimes, because, and I thought you was going this way, and maybe you were probably saying it in a roundabout way as well. Sometimes when you go back, your teachers still see you as the kid.
that's
Right?
exactly what it is.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
instead
that's
of
exactly what it is.
coach.
And
Yeah,
yeah, I think once you leave,
yep,
like, you come back as a kid. Well, like, if you leave and you go and you do something else, you have success. It's always easier to come back because, like you
yep,
said, now you're the adult, now you're the coach, now you're the math teacher, now you're the whatever it may be. Now you're that guy. You're not the kid that you were.
yeah. That's a good point, Coach. So I'm glad you said that, because again, we saw this, and we may talk about it a little bit later on, but we saw a lot of movement from high school football, high school basketball, with a lot of individuals choosing to kind of go back home and kind of do some things in a great way. Let's talk about this. I was going to say the same thing as we try to transition to Pelahatchie and being in a small school. I'm like you, Coach. When I've always been around larger schools, I started at Murrah High School, went to Germantown High School. Again, it wasn't my choice to leave Germantown, made a coaching change. And so I was looking for a place because I was ready to be a head coach as well. I felt like, my years at Murrah, I was ready. I had to wait another 4 years before I got an opportunity. And then Pisgah came, man. And again, I knew nothing about Pisgah. As a former guy I used to work with, Kevin Jasper. He sent me the link, and I said, man, I don't know anything about Pisgah, but I'm gonna go and see what's going on. And I had an opportunity to meet Mr. Craig Yates, still a good friend of mine, and he took a chance on me, man. He believed in me, man. We interviewed, and he offered me the job, and I was kind of surprised because, of course, Pisgah is a lot different from where I was from.
Yeah.
It's smaller, different population, but I was excited about the journey and really enjoyed my time there. And people don't realize that it's a lot of good that happens at small schools, man. And it was good to be there. Of course, a lot of people still there, obviously, but it was just good to be there, man. A lot of administration, a lot of teachers, the community really loves you. They really embrace you. Like, you almost become the president of that city when you begin to coach there. And they want you to win, but even if you don't reach the pinnacle, people still appreciate you being invested in there. And so it was good to be able to see this. I kind of want you to talk about it, man. It was good to be able to see. Of course, the Pisgah and Pelahatchie rival is always a major game. Coach Granberry is still there, does a great job with this
Mm-hmm.
program. And it was good to be able to see you all battle, man, because again, those were some games. Because during that time, I feel like that's kind of when Pisgah was kind of at their height as well, kind of being strong. We had Don Ragsdale came through there, but also you all were very strong at Pelahatchie as well at the time. So we just talk about a little bit in general time about Pelahatchie High School.
Yeah, I mean, Pelahatchie is a great place, man, and I kind of got there, wasn't expecting to go there. That was not something, like I said, that was on my radar. But when it kind of came up, a guy who had been assistant principal at Northwest Rankin, Lewis Bradford, was the assistant principal out there, and it
Yeah.
was funny. I was actually going up to Northwest Rankin to change some clothes, change some laundry at about 8 o'clock at night, and they were playing a soccer game up there, and the job was like about to close. And he's like, "Hey, man, are you not going to apply for the job?" And I was like, man, I really wasn't, I wasn't planning on it. I was like, it's nothing. I just, this isn't a, not a great time right now. I was like, I just had a kid and I had my first child. And it's like, I just don't know if this is a good time for me, but ended up applying, ended up interviewing, ended up getting the job. And man, I couldn't have, I don't know if there's a stop in my career that's provided more growth for me. And I don't know if I'll be honest with you, I don't know if there's a stop for me that was more special to me. Just, the kids that I still talk to from there, kind of, how much time we got to spend together. It's just, those small communities, man, it's tight knit. And just like you said, it's, man, we had some years where I thought we were going to have a real good shot and we didn't make it as far as we wanted to. Had some really, really tough, heartbreaking losses in the playoffs. But kids always played so hard. Like I said, we spent so much time with those kids, my wife and I, and my kids, spent so much time with those kids off the field, and it formed some lifelong bonds that I'll always hold really, really dear to me. And so, now as we keep going and you look back and you don't know where your career will take you from here. I hope I don't got to go anywhere, but hopefully they'll hang on to me for a little while. But, you look back at that time and I just cherish it, man. I grew so much. I learned so many different things. I learned how to be an athletic director. And I learned how to be a dad when I was in Pelahatchie. I learned how to balance those things. I learned how to be a better football coach. I learned how not to be a good football coach at different points in time. If you want me to be honest with you, I didn't know as much as I thought I knew. But that's what made me stronger is, learning how to admit those kind of things, learning how to admit that you don't know everything, which, I mean, a lot of people struggle with that. And I mean that seriously, but sometimes you just have to understand that you got to ask questions. You got to understand that you don't have all the answers, and you got to understand that you're going to make mistakes. And Pelahatchie taught me that. And I'm forever appreciative of those kids and those people for teaching me those lessons, for teaching me those things, and being surrounded by such a great community that still today is, very proud of their school, of their football program, and of all their athletic programs.
I totally agree, man. It's pride. There's no other pride that you see in a lot of smaller schools. And you see it in the larger cities as well. But again, you see it, and you especially see it during like championship time when the whole community comes out. Like you really see their pride. But it's across the board. So, Coach, you decide to go to Ridgeland. Obviously, when you go from a place. And you build and you lay roots there, and a lot of who you are is at a place. You have to get up and pack and leave and kind of go somewhere else. That's always a challenge. I know you had to do it a couple times, but Ridgeland High School, man, you did good, Coach. And to be honest, obviously, people always question when you when you jump from a small school to a larger school. The question is, can he do it or can she do it? Because people just assume people assume because it's a small school, you can't do it at a larger school. But what people don't realize is the grind is the same. It's just pretty much the numbers are different. The politics behind it may be different, but it's almost the same in that. So you get immersed into that community, Madison County, a great school district, obviously different from Rankin County. But again, the standards are still the same. You go to a Ridgeland program that was up and down in a lot of different areas for whatever reasons, and you come in athletic director, high school coach, big expectations. And Coach, I remember back to that season, and I let people know I'm a sports guy. I looked at that schedule, Coach, and Ridgeland's schedule in the beginning, Coach, like it was a brutal schedule. Like I'm thinking like, man, did Coach Williams get this schedule or did the coach before him lead his schedule? Because I'm looking at that schedule, man. You probably never really had a break in there because, Coach, you opened up with so many competitive opponents that it really, really made a difference that year. So just talk a little bit about Ridgeland, just your time there.
Yeah, man, we could talk a long time about Ridgeland just because of the, what was going on with COVID and all that. It was such a crazy time, man. You got so many stories, but that was another year, man. It was just awesome. I had some great guys that I worked with. Was fortunate to kind of, when I got the job, to know a couple of guys on staff and be pretty familiar with them. And then the guys that I didn't know very well, I felt like we meshed really quick because of what we were having to navigate through. And much like what I talked about leaving the Pelahatchie kids, I mean, I go back and I laugh now thinking about it. I mean, I had to meet kids over Zoom for 2 months. We were sitting there doing Zoom workouts. I got my computer propped up and they're in their attic or in their front yard or, they're all over the place. We're working out and talking and trying to connect that way. But it was challenging. I think what I look back to now on that time with COVID and, everybody kind of had varying levels of success, but the guys that, embrace the fact that it was not a whole lot of fun and embrace the fact that, hey, we're going to have to do things a little non-traditional. We're going to have to find different ways to do things. We can't just say, oh, well, it's tough times right now. We can't get it done. I think that was the guys that had success. And that's what, me, my staff, we just kind of jumped in with 2 feet and we kept, it wasn't a matter of, we never asked the question of why can't we? We asked the question of what can we, what can we do? And we kept trying to find a better way. But it was I know I sound like a broken record, but it was another stop just with a bunch of kids who wanted to be coached, who wanted to, be coached the right way and have things done the right way. Zy McDonald was obviously a fantastic quarterback. Richard Mays was a great receiver. Aiden Williams, who just went to Ole Miss. I mean, we had some guys that were just some high level football players. But the important thing about that, and I hadn't talked about this enough, and the people that have worked with me, the kids that have played under me, a lot of when you talk about success and how it happens so fast and how you get kids to buy in is the relationships piece. And, I'm a guy that I genuinely care about the kids. I genuinely care about the people that I work with. I want them to understand that. I want them to feel that. And I want every single day, I want them to feel better because they were around me, not the opposite. So that was something during that. We established, relationships really fast. We had to do it in non-traditional ways. But we were a tight knit group. And when I got there, I told them, by the time we get to, we used it was funny because we started with the word West Point and we ended with the word West Point because West Point ended our season in North State. It was a great game. But I told them that when I got there that we were going to be mentioned physicality wise with the West Points of the world because prior to my time there, Ridgeland was kind of, when you played them, you felt like they weren't going to be real tough. You felt like they weren't going to be real physical. So we really changed the mindset and the culture of that on the field. And then when we got to that West Point game, we went toe to toe, swing for swing with them, and they just made one more play than we did. We had some opportunities to win it and just came up a little short. And that's athletics, that's sports. Like I said, that's what grows you and keeps you going. But it was really interesting if you were around the program that year and you watched the final whistle blow of that game, how much it meant to those kids to win that game for the coaches and for themselves. But how tight they were at the end of it. And I don't think I could say that when we got there that they were just a real tight knit group, but I think they grew into one. I think it meant something to them to go out and work with each other every day. And it meant something to them to go out and battle on a Friday night. So.
Yeah, I agree, Coach. The West Point game was an anticipated game. Everybody knows West Point is a standard. They have a standard with football, and they've been doing it a long time. And so it was rumored, can Ridgeland get there? And so it was always, of course, as sports junkies, we were always looking at what's the possible matchup, what we would like to see. And when that game occurred, it was always, could they do it? And to be honest, when after that game was over, I expected, I wanted to see you excel at that, because if you could overcome that battle, I pretty much knew that you probably could be in a line to kind of fight for that state championship. Because, be honest, in a lot of ways, that could have been a state championship game, but fell a little bit short. But when I saw that, I said, Coach Williams got something special going on, because to be able to do that in a short amount of time, to play the schedule that you had, and then be able to be right there in the moment against a high quality program as West Point, says a lot. So that was good for you. It was good for you to be able to experience that. And I agree with you, Coach. I saw when you did the press conference, when you got the job at Brandon High School, like I can literally see I could see the anguish on your face, because it was tough, because you knew that you had something special at Ridgeland High School. As coaches, we tell kids, we're here to do this for you, boom, boom, boom. But we also let them know on a daily basis. And I think some people on the outside looking in don't see this a lot. We always let kids know that you always have to pursue greatness.
Yeah.
And it's different ways you pursue greatness, and you always have to do what's best for you and your family. And our kids understand it. They may be hurt a little while, but they understand that. Sometimes the people outside the program don't understand it. And
Yeah, and Brandon, I'm gonna stop you right there because I think that's an important thing. Because man, I never anybody again, my family that are the people that are closest with me know, like, man, my high school head coach is one of the guys that I looked up to more than anybody in this world, and he was there for 25 years. And I always said when I got into coaching, I was like, man, I want to go do that. The Lord's had different plans. I've had to move around a lot, but the one thing that I'll tell people when you change jobs is the kids know the truth.
they do.
When you stand in front of them and you're going somewhere else, you don't have to give them some song and dance.
Yeah.
Be honest with them. Be the same guy that you were when you walked in the doors. I mean, this is a little bit of a personal deal with the Ridgeland deal, but I walked in when I was telling them that I was leaving. I looked every one of them in the eyes and I said, guys, from the time I walked in this door,
Yep.
I have done everything that I told you I was going to do. The one thing that I am not going to be able to do is I am not going to be able to provide longevity for you. And that's what I promised you I was going to do. I mean, at that point in time, they know that, but that's as raw as I can be with them. I told you I was going to love you. I told you I was going to coach you hard. I told you I was going to make you a better man. But I told you when I walked in the door, I was going to be here for a while and I was going to provide some longevity because I truly believe that. And I was not able to provide that. And I think that's something that as men, as women, sometimes we just have trouble telling kids that, hey, it's the same thing at the end of the season that we failed you. You know what I mean? Sometimes you have to put things on yourself. I failed. I did not hold up to my word. And kids appreciate that a lot more than when you try to dance around and tell them why you're doing this or why you're doing that, or you say something bad about somebody else that maybe isn't pertinent to what they need to know. A lot of times you just got to take it and you got to roll on. And like I said, I think a lot of my relationship's still intact with those kids is because of how I came and how I left. You know what I mean? I never anticipated it to be that short, but we're still close today because of the integrity and the humility that I showed and standing up in front of them. And that may be a defining moment, one moment that you think about and everybody sees the on field stuff, but they knew how tough that was on me to leave. And they knew that genuinely I felt like that was something that I had to go do and I couldn't turn down.
Yep, Coach. I'm glad you said that, and that's why a part of why I had the podcast, because and not just our profession as teachers and coaches, there's other professions that people throw rocks at individuals because you speak on things that you don't necessarily understand. And as coaches, we know that's a part of the job. So I didn't create this podcast to be able to go ahead and let's hear our sob stories, but I wanted to be able to let coaches be able to share these things because it informs the community and just inform people in general, but it also helps other coaches, most importantly, because they deal with these things. But at the end of the day, man, we all fighting this battle and we all making tough decisions. But it's good just to be able to speak on things and not just to say, well, I got you as a get back moment, but it's just expressing and just talking these things out, because hearing you say those things, it helps me process a lot of things. And I had Coach Owen Miller on the episode before, and he said the same thing. His high school coach stayed a long time. That was just the norm. But now, it's everything in life, it changes, Coach. But for you to speak that, and again, I saw it. I always, when I look at people, and I don't look at what you see on the outside. I look at the inside of the genuineness of what they're saying, of being genuine, and I saw that in you with that, because I just put myself in a position. I said that had to be tough. So, man, respect for that, and thank you for sharing it and your transparency. Coach, you at Brandon High School. Brandon High School speaks for itself. It's been a staple in our community, a staple in the state of Mississippi for a long time. And so I don't have to speak much about it because it speaks for itself. But we are going to kind of dive into certain things. But I kind of want to talk about this. And now, as an athletic director, you've been an athletic director for a little while now, and it is a challenging job. I've worked with some great athletic directors from Clinton Johnson in Jackson Public Schools, Coach Tim Ceramic when I was at Germantown, Coach Granberry who's at Pisgah High School, and now Coach Montgomery at Richland High School. And one thing that I would say Coach Ceramic, excuse me, what he taught me at an early age was relationships. And one day he saw me, we were lifting weights with the football team. And, during that time, Coach, when we grew up, our coaches were kind of standoffish because it's kind of just how it was. It wasn't necessarily a relationship building piece. And Coach Ceramic pulled me to the side and said, hey, Coach, try doing these things. And I didn't even pay attention that he was paying attention to me. And that moment stood out to me because he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And so with that relationship, him and I started to have communication. We started talking, we started to have dialogue because I kind of wanted to learn and understand, from his perspective and being an athletic director. When I went to Pisgah High School, Coach Granberry and I, we would talk from time to time. And the thing that I appreciate about him the most is I didn't always do everything right. And some things, you have to handle nothing illegal, but some things you got to handle to the side. And he said, well, you probably can do this a little bit better. Same thing with Coach Montgomery at Ridgeland High School. We always have a good conversation. So I have respect for athletic directors because here's the main thing why. You have to be a manager of adults. And that is challenging because especially when you got your own sport, they have their own sport, they have their own personalities, they have their own demands, etc. Coach, talk to us about just being an athletic director, some of the ups and downs, and what do you try to implement to make sure that everybody at Brandon High School is moving on one accord? Because sometimes sometimes people are hard on athletics because they feel like, well, they care more about athletics, not the academic side. But what I've noticed with you and all my other athletic directors, they find a way to merge them both together. And that's a challenge too. So if you can kind of speak to that in just your role as being an athletic director.
Yeah, I mean, man, being an AD it's a tough job in this day and age, and I think it's a lot of the reason why you see guys move around so much, especially head football coaches. It's just there's that old thing that everybody talks about being an AD. You're never gonna make everybody happy with decisions
Yes.
you make, and you got to make really tough decisions.
Mm-hmm.
You got to think on your feet. But one thing I always start with, and it kind of goes back to my family oriented mentality, is I try to make decisions with the coaches and the kids in mind. Parents, community, things like that. Those are all important things to balance. But at the end of the day, you have to make decisions with the kids and the coaches in mind, and you have to make them make it with their best interest in mind. I think every stop I've made has been a little different from Pelahatchie, Ridgeland, and Brandon. But kind of speaking to where I'm at right now as an AD, as you go up in levels and as you go up in athletic prestige, the expectations rise. Kind of like what you talked about, the coaches' demands rise a little bit. They've got great programs, they've got great kids, they've got D1 kids, they want the best for their program. So you really have to make sure that everybody's on the same page. You have to have an athletic vision. Everybody has to understand that, and everybody has to feel supported. Equality is not always getting exactly the same thing. Equality is always getting what you deserve when you deserve it, and that's what we try to do, Brandon. That's what I've tried to do every stop. Is like a lot of things go back to financial things, and you have to balance that. You have to make sure it's on the right side. But equality is making sure that every program gets their needs, what they need, when they need it, and that's what I try to provide on the front end of things by raising money, doing fundraisers, things like that. Is make sure that we have the funds to support what we need to support, and I think all of our kids know we do a lot of things from a leadership standpoint to kind of blend our kids together. Our team captains, we do a little leadership academy with them. We've been doing that since I've gotten here. And I think that's made a big difference in kind of how they support each other, how they support our teams. But man, Brandon's a special place. You don't really have to bring kids together. You don't really have to bring the community together. They really do support. From the AD's chair, you just have to make sure that your head coaches are keeping the community involved, keeping the parents informed, and you have to make sure that you're always just keeping a thumb on how can you do things a little bit better. And that's the thing about being an AD is there's a lot of day-to-day processes that you have to get done. There's a lot of boxes that you've got to check, but at the end of the day, you have to be able to balance that and look ahead and find things that you need to keep progressing, whether it be facilities, whether it be just processes that you're completing. But again, I'm gonna say it one more time. You got to take it day by day, man. This is a job that'll absolutely overwhelm you. And if you try to do every little thing perfect, you're gonna fall short every time. You got to do the best you can every single day for the kids and for the coaches. You got to take pride in it. You got to remember that your name's on it at the end of the day. But you got to remember you also have something to go home to. You've got a family to go home to. You got to balance that out. You got to make sure that you always keep that in perspective. And that's something that I've had to grow in the past couple couple of years. It's just understanding it'll be here again tomorrow. You know what I mean? Whatever I got going on, whatever I need to get completed, let's take it day by day. It's like doing this podcast right now. I've had probably 10 text messages, 3 phone calls. It'll be there when I get done. You know what I mean? So you just take it a day at a time, take it a bite at a time, and eventually you'll get to the end of it.
Coach, that's something I had to learn and say it'll be there tomorrow, man. When I first got into coaching, and this was obviously I could do that too because I wasn't married at the time. I didn't have my daughter, so man, I would easily be in the office, man, hours. But then once I had got married, because I've been married now, going on 4 years now. My daughter is 2. Um, I let it go. When I mean I let it go, I'll do what you said. And somebody had to teach me that too. And I'm hoping some young coach hears that, and even some veteran coach who may have probably forgot that it will be there tomorrow. It's tough for me to put it down, no lie, coach, because I'm task oriented. I give myself tasks for the day, and that's probably just the athlete in me. But I want to be able to complete those tasks. But I've learned over time that it will be there, and sometimes that 10 more minutes, or 15 minutes, 20 minutes. You'll make that up. You never make up time. What I mean you'll make that up is it might be something going on at home that you can definitely benefit from. Coach, I want to talk a little bit about, because I know anytime we do the podcast, a lot of time we have new people coming on, and usually they come in here just to see the guests that we have on. So I know a lot of people are here to hear Coach Williams. So, Coach, I want you to talk a little bit about just your administration. Talk a little bit about your staff. I know you can't name anybody, so I'm not going to put you on the spot. I know people love to hear their names, cause I'm not going to put you on the spot. But just talk about the city, your administration. Of course, I know some individual coaches that, I got a chance to. Coach Walker did my podcast, and she came over to Ridgeland, worked with our volleyball girls, and just a growing relationship and friendship with her. Been knowing Coach Barnes for years. I talked to him a couple of weeks ago. Hopefully I can get him on the podcast. And then, of course, Coach Moncrief is back home. We talked about that. He's just coming back home. And, of course, respect what she does. So just shout out to them. I know they're probably listening. And it's a lot more people that I know at Brandon High School. I don't want to name too many people as well, because I know your administration. Of course, I know his name is running. Your head principal is Coach. Is it Principal
Dr. Marshall?
Yeah,
Yep.
he was at Pelahatchie, right?
Yep.
Pelahatchie, of course, I know did some great things there. It was good to see him there. So just talk a little bit about that, man, because just to get him a little shine, because I know the Brandon community is out here supporting you.
Yeah, man. Dr. Marshall and I have had a long relationship. It's funny because when I was 24 years old, when I went out to Pelahatchie, I didn't even know him. Like I said, I kind of told you that connection with Lewis Bradford was getting out there, but we he hired me. We got to work together for kind of like, I can't make fun of him because it was kind of like my time at Ridgeland. He was there about 9 months and he dipped out on me to Brandon. But we got a lot done in a short period of time. We got to work with him for a year, and then he moved on to Brandon. But I think the two of us stayed really close. We stayed in touch from there. He's a guy that I always have admired, working with him, and how hard he works, how he leads, how much he's able to get done. He's just one of those guys that's a doer. He always just seems to get things done when they need to get done. And I knew I wanted to work with him again one day. And that was a lot of the draw to come to Brandon, other than it being, obviously a prestigious athletic program, was to, reunite with Dr. Marshall and get to continue to do some things that we didn't get to finish out at Pelahatchie, just building and elevating and finding ways to be more and more successful. But he's a guy that just does a great job, man. He's been doing it for a long time. I know he'll be in education, whether it's here or somewhere else at even higher up than this, for a long time to come. And I owe a lot of my success to him, and how he took, just like you said earlier about, your principal and AD. I mean, just, he took a chance on me when he didn't have to. He had better applicants, I can assure you. But he just saw something in me, that he thought was special. And, I'm fortunate for that and forever indebted to that.
Man, that's amazing to be able to hear that, because that makes a difference, because there's so many people in the school, from the teachers, the cafeteria staff, the custodial staff, your counselors. There's so many people that gets it done. And so again, just shout out to the whole Brandon High School community. Again, we love to name so many people, but you don't want to leave anybody out.
Man, it's a great community. It's second to none. It really is. It's one of the very, very few places in the state of Mississippi that it is. I mean, for my money, it's the only one, the 7A school, that feels like a small town, because of the investment from everybody from the, city officials to the community all the way down. I mean, everybody bleeds red and black, supports everything we do, tries to help us be as successful as we possibly can. And it's something that anybody who has ever come here, anybody who's ever spent a period of time here can attest to that it's just a really special place.
Yeah, I agree, man. Coach Foster, she speaks highly of it. Of course, she transitioned to Murrah, but she speaks highly of it as well. Coach, let's talk a little bit about football, Coach. Here's one thing that stands out to me about Brandon High School, and I think it's a lot because of who you are, Coach. When I look at your schedule, and of course, again, just being a football junkie, basketball junkie, baseball junkie, I look at stories, and I look at things that maybe everybody doesn't look at. I love to look at the schedule. I love to look at matchups, and I love to look at districts, Coach. And um, the district that you played, that have played in for years, I know it may have changed a little bit with 7A, and the schedule that you have, Coach, that's a tough schedule, man.
Yeah. I
Um,
was crazy enough to make it for some reason,
oh
but
yeah, Coach. Yeah, I think you've been doing it for a while, Coach, but it works for you, man. But this is kind of what I like with it. And Coach Tadlock at Raymond, he talked about that as well. If you have the talent and ability to be able to schedule hard, schedule hard. His belief is it doesn't really matter, wins or losses early in the season because you learn from that. But it's preparing your kids for different styles of play, different environment, different coaches, adversity that's going to help you later on when it really, really counts. So, Coach, as a head coach, talk to me about how do you prepare your kids for that grind, because you already know people see Brandon High School. Of course, the rank is going to come out soon if they're not already out. Well, by the time we record this, it will be out. So I know the rankings are going to be high. Um, how do you prepare your kids for that moment? Because everybody has Brandon circled around on every schedule. Coach, you play some amazing rival games that I'd like you to talk about as well. Because man, I know when Brandon and Mazda Central plays, Coach, man, it's people, man, it's darn near people will probably scout tickets if they could. I mean, scalper tickets if they could, because you got to get there at a certain time. I just remember just seeing, because I know when I was in Madison County at the time, I know when Madison played, I had opportunity to see how they had the traffic flow. Like they try to piece stuff together. Of course, you got Pearl, Northwest Rankin, Coach. So, Coach, you in a gauntlet of a season, every single game, every single season. Coach, how do you prepare your kids for that moment? And just talk about how your staff prepares for that, Coach, because it's not for everybody.
mm. I have, this kind of goes into why are you successful as a coach and as a football program. And here's what I like to say is, like, I don't, we don't have these big slogans up on the wall. We don't do all these, quotes on t-shirts. I'm not talking bad about anybody that does. We just don't do that. Our expectations in the building don't change year to year. Where we expect to be every year is not going to change year to year. Our opponents change, the external expectations change, the preseason rankings change, the wins and losses are probably going to change a little bit every year, but our vision, our values, our goals, they remain the same every year. I don't change that. I never will, unless I think there's some way that we can do it better. But right now, I just feel like kind of what we push to, what we focus on, the emphasis we put on certain things, I think it's really worked for us. Staff is 100% bought into it. The kids are, anybody who says our kids aren't 100% bought into it, but you got to make sure that anytime you go into a season, you get the important ones bought into it. And as you move through the year, you make sure that everybody gets as close to 100% bought in as possible. But when you look at this year's schedule, it's much like the last. I think it's a little tougher earlier on than it is later in the year. It's a little front heavy, but we went out and we scheduled the best. And, when you look at our schedule, those first five opponents, and I legitimately have never been able to say this, but I think all five of the people that we play will contend for a state championship in their classification.
So can you share, if you had a schedule in front of you, can you share your schedule so we can kind of get a visual of that?
Yeah, so the first five we'll start off with, and I always count them because me and Coach Shamble, since I was at Ridgeland, have kind of become, professional friends. And I will start off with West Point in the Jamboree. We'll play a 2-quarter scrimmage with them. Then we'll go Picayune, Madison, Clinton, Warren Central, and Gulfport. And for very different reasons, all those are going to be a different challenge. I think every one of them, like I said, is going to be able to contend. You never know who's going to win it year to year in these higher classifications. I mean, everybody's got good football teams, the high level programs. But I think we'll challenge ourselves in a number of different ways. Every one of those teams is a little different. Every one of them has a different strength. And a lot of that early season grind to me in a football season is about finding what you're not very good at and seeing how quickly you can cover that up. And we've been able to do that really well the past 2 years. We've been able to kind of navigate through that non-district. You know, we started off 0-2 that first year, which I was pulling my hair out every single day, and then reeled them off until we lost in the state championship game. And then last year went undefeated till the Oak Grove game, and then didn't lose again to the state championship game. So it's kind of one of those deals where, you know, that's kind of the mantra. We take things one game at a time. I think everybody wants me to stand up and, you know, talk about, well, this may be the year we win a state championship. We're going to go back, blah, blah. We just don't really talk about that kind of stuff. I don't think you get anywhere doing that. That's not what got us to where we've been. That's not how we became successful. That's not how we got to state championships. We got to state championships by focusing on day-at-a-time approach, taking each week as its own week, making sure that you get better at the things you need to get better at, and making sure that every day when you leave, you understand that you're a little closer to victory on a Friday night than you were the day you walked in the door. So to me, there's no secret recipe for success. I think every single person has to evaluate their program year to year. I think you have to do a really good job with your personnel, with the hand that you're dealt, because it's not going to be good all the time. You know, you got to find ways to move people around. You got to find ways to make it work and make it fit. But more than anything, and the hardest thing is sustaining success and keeping those values in place when things don't go well, when you face tough times. And that's what we've been able to do here at Brandon the last 2 years. And I think we're set up to do it again right now. I feel like we're in a really good place mentally. I feel like our kids and our leadership's in a really good place. But challenges are coming, okay? Because, I mean, I know everybody wants us to go 15-0, but the chances are, you know, there's going to be a hiccup along the way. You know what I mean? You're not always going to go out and play well on a Friday night. So you got to ride those highs and lows and continue to punch and continue to fight. And, you know, our kids know that. We'll come in and we'll attack every day, and we'll make sure that we're doing it for our brother, and we'll focus on doing our job, which is, like I said, which is what's made us successful.
Coach, you make it sound easy, man. And I know it's not easy, but, you know, it's good that you have a program that believes and buys into what you're doing every single day. Because as I'm looking at that schedule, I wrote it down. I think I missed one team: West Point, Picayune, Madison, Clinton, Warren Central. Those have all been staples in their programs, and they've all been staples in their communities. And you do have to do it one game at a time, because if you're not doing it one game at a time and you're looking ahead, it always can bite you, because anything can change on any given night. And so that's just good that you said that. And to be honest, Coach, undefeated, and it's just my opinion, and Justin, my brother, and I, we talk about this a lot. Undefeated is always great. You always want that feat. But what I've learned over my few years of coaching, I would rather, and it's hard to say as a coach, but sometimes I'd rather lose a game early or two before I lose. Because a lot of times you see a team go undefeated and they lose that game when it really matters. And the reason they lost, or part of the reason they lost, I'm not going to say the reason they lost, but a part of that is because you didn't see something early in the year that you probably would have seen. Because we all know when you're winning, sometimes we ignore some of the things that we're doing. That's just life. Success kind of does that. But I think when you can create challenges along the season, I think that's kind of where I see you going with that. If you happen to have a slip up, sometimes kids feel like that's the end of the world. Oh, Coach, we're not undefeated anymore. We're not number one in the state anymore. We dropped out. And you got to get kids to understand that doesn't matter at the end of the day. Yeah, we may not be ranked this anymore, but you can learn so much in adversity. Sometimes you can learn in success. Now, to be honest, Coach, hey, I would love to go undefeated. My season, I love to go 32-0. But if I have to learn something early in the season to get to where I need to go, I think that's a great thing, which kind of leads into what you talked about as well, man. Just some adversities that you just kind of you have in life, in your personal life, in your coaching life, and in your careers. So, Coach, how do you, just thinking of your career as a whole, how have you dealt with adversity? Because adversity affects us a lot, and this is the part that coaches don't talk about a lot. And I think it may just be the male ego, or just kind of how we are. A lot of times we don't get vulnerable, and a lot of times we don't become transparent. And I know that might be crazy to try to be transparent on a podcast, but how have you took adversity in life and made it better? And what can you say to us as coaches to help us deal with adversity? Because you never know when adversity comes.
Yeah, I personally, for me, I think a lot of how I've been able to deal with that is, like I've alluded to her a few times, but having a strong wife, keeping my family in perspective and understanding that that's the most important thing to me.
Yeah.
But the second thing is just having really good people around me. I mean, I think that is super important in this profession. Um, I think a lot of people would probably look at me, if we ask coaches around the state, a lot of people look at me and say, I want to be the head coach and AD at Brandon. A lot of people want to do that, but showing up every day and dealing with the day-to-day grind and dealing with the job and dealing with the adversities that come to it is another thing. But even in my elevated position there, I still seek people that somebody may say, well, they're not as high up as you. They're not. Well, it doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is, what are people's heart? I know the people that truly care about me. I know the true friends that I have in this world. And I lean a lot on their opinion. I still seek it out daily. There's a lot of guys that I really, and I've mentioned it a couple of times, that I'm just indebted to. And, if they told me something right now about what I was doing, I'd take a real hard look at it.
Yeah.
But you got to always have that rock, man. You got to keep your faith in check. I think that's something that for us is really hard as coaches with time, and something that even as I'm sitting here right now is really humbling. And the amount of time that you spend on your job and the amount of time you spend on your personal life and your faith is probably not where it needs to be. But you got to have that rock that you can go back to. You got to have that thing that you lean back on. You got to have that thing that puts everything back in perspective when things get really bad. I've had some times over the past couple of years that have, really been dark, man. It's been tough. It's been some moments, and it's, I think everybody looks at losses. I mean, yeah, losses put you in a bad place for a little while. We take it a lot harder, and the longer you go, the harder it is to get over it. But at the end of the day, I've tried to just make sure that, hey, pick yourself back up. I mean, nobody feels sorry for you. Let's get to the new year. Let's keep going, no matter what it is, whether it's a loss, whether it's something dealing with an off the field issue. You've got to always lean back on that, always put things back in perspective. And I said this at the very beginning, just don't take yourself too serious, man. Like it is what it is. As long as your values are in place, as long as you're still pushing your kids, as long as you're still growing them up, as long as you're still leading adults, your mission's still going. Your mission ain't ended just because of one shortcoming. Your mission hadn't ended because of one adversity. Your mission is still the same. And I believe that we're all here for a different reason. We're all in a different role for a different reason. And you're in your role at that point in time for that particular reason. And it's important that you find that. It's important that you lean into that part of it, and that you continue to push on through adversity. Find a way to pull yourself out of it. Find a way to relight the fire if it's getting a little dim, and keep going.
Coach, I'm glad you said that, and something hit my spirit when you said that. And one thing that I really kind of been praying about too is just that I understand it because we're so competitive, but I really wish that as coaches we could get to a place where we can actually bond. And it's tough to do that because it's a it's like two lions in a cage on Saturday night, or I mean Saturday afternoon, or Friday night, or Monday, Tuesday, whatever day your sport plays. And a lot of times the coach across the sideline, he or she does become the enemy for a little bit. And I think for so long we have been taught to be so competitive and beat our opponent, that I see it a lot, especially I just talk about basketball. I see it a lot. We forget that the person across the same sidelines we are. I know football is opposite. We forget that they're a human being, and I would like to see it. I know this me. People say I'm always trying to be positive, bring people together, but I would really like to see us be more a close knit. And I understand it's hard because everybody is not on that. Everybody's sometimes attitude, sometimes pride, sometimes people just don't want to be like that. Some people just want to be themselves, but I just think our game would be so much better if we had more genuine relationships, because it's what you said. we all gonna go through something. We all may be going through something. But it's so much better when you know somebody is there to lean on and support you with that. And sometimes it's just good to know people are in a distance are supporting you, man. Like you and I talked before the podcast, man. I was definitely in support of you from a distance. You probably didn't know that. Probably wouldn't have known that because again, didn't necessarily have a conversation. But it's good to know that it's people in the background that's supporting you and keeping your shoulders lifted up, man. So just kind of something to hit my heart, and hopefully it rings a bell to all of our professionals in our career, because again, it's much better when we can all be on the same page. Coach, it's been a great interview, man. I know it's getting close to that time, man, and I'm just enjoyed it just talking to you. I know that people picked up a lot of good information from you. I do want to ask you two more questions, and then I'm going to allow you to just to continue to enjoy your day because I know you have a busy schedule. Um, I might just stick to this one question. Coach, talk to me about some of your all-time football greats. I know when I bring my basketball coaches on, we always talk about who's the best starting five. And, of course, we get the argument between Magic or Steph or Jordan or LeBron. But we don't really have that conversation a lot in football, Coach. And I know the last time I did it with Coach Kelly, I tried to do it by positions. And then I looked at that list. I said, Coach Kelly got named 12 or 13 people. So I kind of changed the question up a little bit. But just tell us some of who you think are some of your all-time greats in just the game of football, in the NFL at that fact.
Yeah, man, I'm a everybody heads will roll, but I don't know why, but when everybody was a Saints fan, I figured I wanted to go pick somebody else. So when I was young, I started liking the Patriots, and back to the Brewski days and Bledsoe and some of those when I was little, and I don't know why I liked them, but obviously from there, Tom Brady's kind of been my guy,
Yep.
kind of been the guy that I've loved watching. Enjoyed every minute of his career, and getting to see that success, and just watching a guy that wasn't uber talented from a physical standpoint just go out and for years be super successful. And I think that he's the kind of guy that you can learn a lot from. It ain't always the guy that runs the 4.4. It's not always the guy that's 6'6". Sometimes it's the guy that's just got that competitive spirit in him to go out every time and go win the game. And I don't know if there will ever be another one like him from that standpoint. I think Patrick Mahomes is fantastic and probably going to be right in that realm. Aaron Rodgers has been really good, but there was just something a little different about Brady, man. He just had something to him. And despite his insufficiencies, he found a way to make it work every Sunday, it seemed like.
All right. Well, who are some of your great defensive guys? You would think just defensively, who would be some great defensive guys?
Man, there's so many in the game now. I was a wideout growing up, so I had some guys that I really loved watching. I mean, everybody will remember, but Reggie Wayne with the Colts was one of my favorites. If any kid that played wideout, if they say Randy Moss wasn't one of their favorites to watch, that would be funny. But so opposite that, growing up, Champ Bailey. I can remember playing Madden with Champ Bailey and watching on Sundays and getting to watch him. He was really fun to watch. Troy Polamalu, Darrelle Revis in his prime. I mean, that was some guys that always, if they were on, I want to turn it on and watch them lock somebody up or watch them hit somebody. So those are a couple I could think of. I mean, obviously, I think too from a defensive standpoint, Aaron Donald's probably one of the funnest guys to watch right now. He's another guy that he ain't 6'5" and bulletproof, but he is a bad man, and
he is, man.
Gets after the quarterback. So
yeah, his passion for the game is amazing to be able to see. I thought about this question. I do want to ask you this to pick your brain about this. I was just reading, as always. I was listening about the conversation around NFL running backs. I'm not as knowledgeable about that. Kind of confused a little bit about why. Well, I know why just reading it, but I'm just my sports fan to me, I'm just kind of confused is why is the running back not valued, man? Because, the running game is obviously we know the game is different. There's a lot of, spread and attack offense, things of that nature, fast pace. But to not value the running back, that baffles me, man. And I thought about this. I know this crazy. I said, man, the running backs need to go on strike because it's just like anything else, man. Like, everybody plays a part. If you're on the offensive line, the defensive line, special teams, the kicker, the holder, like I don't understand it, Coach. Talk to me a little bit about that. Make sense to me, man.
I'm gonna take it in a different direction than you probably think I'm gonna go to. It's something I always tell people, and I truly believe this. And it's I think the running back position is devalued a little bit. There's a lot of studies out there with, amount of carries and when guys start slowing down and the value of paying those guys versus what you can get a rookie contract. But like any of us in the coaching profession, like any of us when we were playing on the field, it's a very humbling experience to remember that logo that's sitting on your chest is going to be playing football, is going to be playing basketball, is going to be doing whatever. When you're gone, the next guy's going to come in and play. Yeah. And I do think it's a little bit, devalued, but there's probably some numbers that back that up as far as when guys start slowing down. It's also probably, when you look at the NFL, it has a lot to do with roster construction and why that position doesn't need to be paid as much as some other ones that they may see as being a little more important or, a little less replaceable because you've just seen a lot of rookie running backs come in that maybe weren't the highest drafted guys and have a lot of success. But It's just one of those things, man. Again, it'll humble you real quick when you realize it doesn't matter how much success you've had or how little success you've had. If you decide you're not going to be there, they're still going to play football and somebody else is going to go do that job,
Yep. That also, I guess hearing you say that kind of, it makes sense. I bring it back to my sport, basketball. The center position is not valued as much as it used to be. Of course, you think about Shaq, Hakeem Olajuwon, Patrick Ewing, all of those great centers. But to be honest, a lot of NBA teams are going with a guy that's a little bit more mobile, has a little bit more agility, 6'9". Yeah.
And the game's changed, and it's just I think about too with basketball. Going back to the coaching analogy that I'm using is like the Celtics this year. Amadoka out, another guy steps in. They have very similar success. You know what I mean? And I don't know that Joe Mazzulla was any different than him, but at the end of the day, made a mistake. Somebody steps in, they're going to do a job just like you did, and, basketball, much like football, it's kind of transitioning, it's positionless basketball now. Everybody wants to stand outside the 3-point line, a lot less in and out, a lot less pick and roll. But I mean, that's just what it is, and I think the NFL is very pass happy now, and the rules lend more to you throwing the football because you can't touch the receivers, can't touch the quarterback. So, I mean, if you really think about it, it almost makes more sense for you to drop back because there's two bad things that can happen for the defense before the ball ever leaves your hand. Yeah. You can get a pass interference, you can get roughing the passer, and they happen a lot more than they don't when those guys are moving as fast as they are and are big as they are.
Would that be the same on the high school level?
I think a little bit, but quarterbacks aren't near as protected. Like our kid on a Friday night I don't know what they do to him, but he gets absolutely smoked every Friday night after the ball leaves. So they're not protected as much. It's not the same, but then again, those kids aren't making $50 million a year like some of those NFL quarterbacks are, and I do believe that makes a pretty big difference.
But that makes sense, man. Like I said, I ask those questions because it's good to know people who are in it and they can give you their perspective. And to me, that's always what I've been about. It's just trying to get some accurate facts. Right. Coach, as we wrap up, of course, we anytime we do a conclusion with basketball, we always say take the final shot. Obviously, we're in football, Coach. So again, man, we're down to our 2-minute drill, man. And so during this time, we allow our guests to be able to kind of close the show. And they can close it different ways. It's been done different ways, and I advocate that. They may recognize someone. They may give a final statement. They may express something. Again, we give the floor, or we give the field, we give the stage to our guests to be able to just kind of close the show and share whatever they feel on their heart. So, Coach, 2-minute drill belongs to you, man.
Well, I've recognized everybody that I need to recognize. I hadn't even thought about this, but I am going to say this. If anybody listens to it this long, I'm a lot more interesting than I think I am. If they listen to a podcast for this long, Brandon, it ain't nothing against you. I guess it'd be your voice that they were charmed by. One thing, man, I feel led to say right now is, I have a lot of people ask me, hey, how do I become a head coach, right? Like, I mean, that's a real common question that I get. And probably the biggest thing that I see now, and this is, everywhere. I'm not calling out any particular place. I'm not even just calling out places I've worked is, man, people need to understand that you need to be where your feet are and you need to do the best job in your role at that point in time, and people will notice you. I think about all the time, and I mentioned this before we got on the podcast. I noticed you when you were at Pisgah. I thought you did a great job. I loved your energy. I love the way your kids carried themselves. I love the way you played. People will notice you if you do a great job of where you are. But there's so many people now that are so worried about what they're, what's outside their job description, where they're going to go next, who they need. At the end of the day, man, be who you are, be you, be where you're at and do a great job doing that. And everything that you want will come to you from there. Don't try to write a script that's not your own. The script's already written for you. All you got to do is go out there and be the best version of you and play it out.
Man, Coach, I thank you for that, man. And again, I thank you for your humble spirit. Trust me, man. I try to bring on everybody that people enjoy listening to and talking to. And I just like having individuals on. And then also, too, I like having upcoming individuals on who are going to be great in what they do. So, again, I invite everybody to listen to what Coach Williams got at his program. Of course, we got on a Friday night. I know, obviously, the opponents are not going to root for you. But again, if you need something to do on a Friday night, Brandon High School will have a great atmosphere. Again, if you know anybody who wants to be a part of this, again, we don't discriminate man or woman. Any sport, assistant or head coach, volunteer, paraprofessional, we can all learn from something. We can all learn something from everyone. And Coach said it a lot of times. It's not about me. It's not about you. Nobody is bigger than the other. We're just all trying to grow athletics. So again, Coach, I thank you again. As always, make sure you all please subscribe. Please show support. And I haven't said this in a while, but I haven't had a high school coach on in a while. So I'm gonna make sure I say this because again, I have a platform to be able to say this as well. Support Coach Williams. Of course, Brandon High School, they do great things. They got a lot of things going on that are great, but he may need some support some way. And what I mean by that, it could be a prayer, could be a volunteer, could be a meal. He don't need you to coach now. We don't need you on the sideline running up and down. He got that part down. But financially, do what you can to support Coach Williams. I know a lot of people out here from Brandon High School are listening, so support him support him in support of In the Sand podcast. Coach, I'm going to try to get out to a game. Everybody, I said, they're going to be my commitment this year. Everybody that comes on to the show, I'm going to be at a game. So hopefully, man, I'm going to shoot you a text. I'm stay out the way, just let you know I'm there supporting you, but looking forward to be able to see what you got going on. So until next time, as I always say, be kind and be nice, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Appreciate it, Coach.